Hi, this is Randal Schwartz, host of Floss Weekly. This week, Simon Phipps joins me to talk about OpenCSW, the packaging system for Solaris. You'll want to hear about this, so stay tuned.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Floss Weekly is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Floss Weekly with Randal Schwartz and Simon Phipps, episode 163 for April 27th, 2011, OpenCSW. This episode of Floss Weekly is brought to you by Netflix. Watch thousands of TV episodes and movies streamed to your PC, Mac, or TV instantly. Plus, get DVDs by mail in about one business day. For your free 30-day trial, go to netflix.com/twit. It's time for Floss Weekly, the show about free, libre, open-source software. I am your host, Randal Schwartz, merlin@stonehenge.com, coming to you again this week from what looks like a closet, but really is the sort of refreshment area, the stay-away area, the sleep area. There's a cot over there at Media Temple, current providers of bandwidth for me to be able to be here and provide the show to Floss Weekly. As always, I am joined by a guest this week. Not a guest, but a co-host. I'm joined by a co-host. Let's call a co-host, and that'll be better this time. This week, it's the incredible Mr. Phipps. Welcome, Simon. Welcome back to the show.
It's my pleasure. I'm here broadcasting from the sunny United Kingdom, where temperatures are soaring up into the low cold and heading towards the tepid and maybe even the warm in time for the royal wedding, which at the time we're recording is in the future, and at the time you're listening to the podcast is in the past.
Very good, very good. Well, though, if they listen to it this afternoon, they might be able to hear it. We do get it out pretty quick on the shows these days, at least for the audio. We have a really interesting couple of guests today. We're going to talk to Philip Brown, who is the founder, the original founder of the OpenCSW packaging system. We're also going to talk to Ben Walton, who is the current head of the operation. And we're going to, OpenCSW is a packaging system for Solaris, and I think also for Open Solaris. I'm pretty sure it works on both of those. But Solaris, of course, being the operating system which you're a little bit familiar with, Simon, right?
Yes, I was involved in that for a little while I was back at Sun. And indeed, I remember the OpenCSW community forking or unhosting itself from Blastwave. So I'm looking forward to finding out how they've got on and why that happened and what they've done since.
Very good, very good. But before we bring them on, I have a very important announcement, very, very important announcement to make. We have once again, a sponsor for this show, Netflix. I use Netflix every night to help put me to sleep, not because there's some sort of sonic wave system, but because they provide me thousands of TV and movie episodes right to my laptop. So I want to say this episode of Floss Weekly is brought to you by Netflix. Netflix delivers movies directly to your home, and that saves you time, money, and hassle. You can instantly watch thousands of TV episodes and movies streamed directly to your PC or Mac, like my Mac laptop here, or streamed to your TV via Netflix-ready device, including the Xbox 360, the PS3, the Nintendo Wii, or my favorite, the Roku. I have the Roku, and it does that just fine for Netflix. You can also get DVDs by mail in about one business day. You can watch as many movies as you want, anytime you want. There are never any late fees or due dates. And one of the things I really like about Netflix is their selection for live streaming. I haven't actually used their DVD service, but I've watched their live streaming services since the day I actually got Netflix. One of the things I was watching last night, they have the entire South Park series. This is great. So I've been watching South Park from episode 1 all the way through. I've gotten up to about the middle of season 2 now. And no commercials. You just watch it, you pull it up, and when it's done with one episode, you push a button and it says, here comes the next one. Really love that about Netflix. So you can watch these things instantly, all included with your subscription dollars. You can watch that series. You can watch thousands of TV episodes, thousands of other movies instantly. When you register for a free trial membership, go to netflix.com/twit, TWIT, and you can sign up for 30 days for your free trial. Please do that. I really like Netflix and really appreciate their support of the show. Well, let's go ahead and bring on our guests. Let's welcome Philip Brown. Phil Brown, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks.
Great. And where are we speaking to you from? I can kind of tell, I think, but go ahead and say.
Well, guess again. I'm in Lakewood, California.
But you're feeling really British today, huh?
Yes, can't escape my roots.
For those that aren't watching the video, he's got a Union Jack behind him, so I thought it was sort of appropriate that he would have that up there. And let's also welcome Ben Walton. Ben, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Great.
Afternoon,
Where are we
maybe.
speaking to you from?
I'm in Hamilton, which is just outside of Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
A Canadian. All right. Very cool. So we're well represented here in today's show with all the English-speaking countries in the world. Phil, I gave a really poor overview of what OpenCSW was about at the beginning of the show. I'd like to know if you kind of give us like the 30,000-foot view of what is OpenCSW and what does it contribute to the world?
Okay, OpenCSW provides free binary packages for Solaris. It's not quite as restrictive, shall we say, as Debian. We don't go for the must be free, etc. It's free as in beer, so to speak. So anything that we think is useful and we can legally provide to people, we package up and provide to them.
Great. So if I'm a Solaris user, does this also include Open Solaris too, or can we lump that all together this way?
Most, if not all, of our packages will work on Open Solaris, but we officially support the formal releases from formerly Sun, now Oracle.
Okay, great.
It's sort of a best effort, but on Open Solaris, but we don't promise.
Okay, great. So let me just fall back a little bit for some of our audience. So if I have a Solaris installation, it comes with a lot of really great sort of base software, but I will often want to put things on it like Apache or Git or Perl even, these kinds of things. So this is where these packages would come in, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And what's the problem of packaging? Why do we need a solution for that? Why can't I just download Git or download Perl and build it and install it?
Well, you certainly can. It's basically like Debian. Long time ago, it was inspired by Debian. I wrote possibly the first real comprehensive downloader back in somewhere around 2004. I wrote package get, originally inspired by apt-get. And it's not like, Solaris is a little different from Debian in that Solaris comes with the kernel. So you don't get kernels from us. So once you have the kernel and all that, you can compile anything you want, but why spend hours and hours when you can spend comparatively few minutes just downloading precompiled stuff?
Okay, so part of the problem it solves is that I'm not burning GCC time on my own box, or whatever the compiler is for Solaris. I think it's actually a separate Sun's compiler instead, or whatever now it's Oracle's compiler, I should say. But I think the biggest thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, the biggest thing that a packaging system covers is the whole idea of dependencies, that in order to install some fancy, X display thing, I've got to actually have all the X libraries installed and so on. How does something like OpenCSW deal with that?
Exactly, yeah, that's additional benefits, as well as the occasional package software that is a hard port. You saw that 95% of software does compile fairly easily on the Solaris, but there's a few that are kind of tricky, and we bash them into conformity. We use Sun's, Oracle's native packaging format, and that packaging format does actually declare dependencies. It's interesting that in comparison, Sun freeware has been providing Sun packages for a long time, but they do not include the dependency information in the packages, whereas we do. So, I mean, it's very similar to equivalency. Package get is to apt-get, and Sun's SVR4 package is like dpackage. So it's very sort of close equivalency there. Well, at a high level, obviously, the internals are very different.
Okay, so one of the problems that a packaging system solves...
not as granular.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So the dependencies that we can declare are not as granular as you would get in RPM or Debian dpackage. So that does present some trouble at times.
More specifically, dpackage lets you provide dependencies on specific versions, whereas the Solaris packaging format just says you will depend on this package.
And how is that run into trouble for you?
Well, it doesn't really much, because we have sort of a rolling, currently supported thing, just like any particular version of Debian. And so just a matter of if you want support from us, to sanely support you, we expect that you will be on the current release of the packages. So the first thing is, well, okay, do an update and make sure you have the latest. So it's not necessarily a problem for us. It's potentially a problem for people who, for some reason, really want to stick to GCC 3.2 instead of GCC 3.4. Can't imagine why, but that would be an issue.
Another thing that the packaging system solves
include multiple versions of a library.
Go ahead. What?
In the same we will also at times include the same version or multiple versions of a library within the same package, so that we can provide both while still providing the newer for things that are linked against older libraries.
Okay, so that's one way to get around that issue then. Great. Well, the other thing I think that a system like OpenCSW must do is, I know that although everything is mostly source compatible across most major versions of Unix now, I know that some packaging systems have to patch the source in order to get it to compile on Solaris. So at what point does that happen in OpenCSW?
Whenever needed, basically. As I said, most things compile fairly well. The more common problems we run into is just unexpected flags. We need to add compile flags. There's a lot of GCC-ism, and we actually try to standardize for the most part on Sun's compiler, so the GCC-isms sometimes bite us, but usually it's straightforward, and we just tweak the tweak our environment or something, like the C flags, and it's pretty straightforward. It's fairly rare these days that we have to actually patch source.
Yeah, that's the really nice thing about most Unixes being mostly close, and now with all the stuff with configure and things like that, that most of the stuff is actually sort of factored back out. How did the OpenCSW project get started? And I imagine, Phil, you'd be the best guy to handle that.
Yeah, we have a history page lurking somewhere, but I'll try and sum it up.
Sure.
So back in around, 2004-ish, actually earlier than that, originally I just wanted to use Sun Freeware, which is one of the oldest binary distributions of packages. And I wrote a package get with that in mind. I thought, hey, cool packages, but I'm tired of manually downloading stuff. Let me write a wrapper. Hey, Debian looks like a good one to copy. I'll do that. And that worked for a while, and then I suddenly noticed the dependency problem. And I thought, well, all the manual download is nice, but I'm still manually picking stuff to download. So I asked Steve Christensen, hey, I've added the support for dependencies. Would you mind just adding it to the package you put together? And for some reason he had said no, and still says no. So interesting enough, while package-get still supports Sun Freeware and people do download stuff from Sun Freeware using package-get, I figured, well, okay, time to do something else. And I originally started collecting some packages, just a handful, because Sun actually had its own distribution on a CD it's called the Companion CD, and they did that for a while, but they only had about 100 packages. I decided to make my life easy and build on that, but then I decided, found out I need more and more, and so eventually I put a request out on Comp Unix Solaris Usenet group for asking for volunteers to really start making a real packaging project. And so that's originally when Dennis Clark volunteered Blastwave to host the project. And so we had started with a couple of people, and grew more and more, and we got to up in the 1,000 number of packages. And then a few years back, unfortunately, Dennis wanted to do different things with Blastware than we wanted to do. He wanted to go more on the commercial side, and so we split off OpenCSW.
Cool.
So I can remember some of that happening back in the day, I have to admit. I'm very interested, actually. Solaris now has 3 core packaging systems, and my view is that a distro is defined largely by the packaging system and the way that the software gets onto the platform. Do you look upon OpenCSW as a distribution of Solaris?
No, actually. At some point, I was interested in doing that sort of thing with Open Solaris, but well, it's just too much effort involved there. That's a huge project in itself. And there are various people who attempted to do their own open Solaris distributions, but they picked different mechanisms, and so it just didn't come together, unfortunately.
Right. So I know that NextCenter is Debian based. Are they using OpenCSW, or do they have their own Debian package installer?
They have their own package set.
Right. And is it all one big friendly family with people sharing packages, or are there multiple versions of these things too?
They're completely separate. That's kind of like saying, well, no. I'm trying to find a good equivalent. That's like saying, well, yeah, it's all Linux, so I'm just going to build a system and mix and match deep packages and RPMs.
Well, it's not really like that. It's like saying that Ubuntu and Debian both share the same package format, and hey, look, all their package maintainers are the same people, and hey, look, it's mostly the same packages.
Well, it's not different because
I'd expect that NextCenter and OpenCSW might well have a lot of overlap.
Well, is more like just taking the kernel and building Debian like a K-FreeBSD idea, or a Debian FreeBSD. They're using the kernel, but it's a Debian userland, Debian tools. Whereas we're the Solaris kernel, the Solaris userland, we're in addition. We provide the things that you either have versions that are too stale or not existing in the commercial Solaris.
There's also so there's two things. One is Ubuntu is explicitly built on Debian. They're basically downstream from Debian in a lot of ways. So they have that in mind, or at least they did. There's also other differences between OpenCSW and other Solaris-based efforts, and that is that NextCenter uses a different packaging format. Way back when I decided, I was not going to use depackage or try and shoehorn some other packaging format onto Solaris. I wanted to use the native Solaris packaging. So NextCenter and other things like that do not use it.
Right. So does that mean that you're going to pick up IPS as well, because that is now the native packaging format on future versions of Solaris?
There's been some talk of that. A couple of years ago when it came out, I was interested in investigating that. They did some really weird things with IPS. They did... Well, that's a long thing. Let me shorten it by saying we actually do some things better than IPS does. Because the sys4 package format is somewhat extensible, it lets you use these things called class action scripts, which you can kind of sort of think of it as extensions to the packaging format. So we have packages that we download that basically extend the functionality. And at this point, I think our functionality in a lot of areas is better than IPS. So it's definitely something that we want to keep an eye on, but it's not a critical thing. Also, the future, the next release is going to support the current package formatting as well. That being said, there's also a certain amount of lack of engineering time and drive. If someone was really fired up about IPS and said, hey, I really want to work on this, and can I help you guys? We'd say, yeah, great, come on in.
Right. Now, I'd like to pick up on your community in a minute, but before I get there, I'm interested in how Oracle's acquisition of Sun has affected OpenCSW. Has it had any impact on you at all, or were you already so independent of Sun that really it had no consequences?
Yeah, we were pretty independent of Sun. There's a long and strange history there. Yeah, it is basically not affected us because we've been completely independent.
Right, right. So how are you positive about the future of Solaris under its new masters?
It's rather hazy, and Oracle is not doing a good job of marketing or even selling Solaris, which is really bothersome. So still in the wait-and-see mode.
Right, right. So you've presumably got a large global community of Solaris deployers. How is your community structured?
Community in terms of people who work on OpenCSW, or users, or both?
Well, they're both community. Let's start with the people who work on OpenCSW. Who are they? How many of them are there? Where are they?
Well, they're all over the world. A lot in Europe, only a few in the North Americas, or the Americas. We have, Ben, how many do you think? 15-ish, mostly active people right now.
That sounds about right. There's 15 or so core people, and there are several that contribute packages from time to time. Basically, when a package that they look after needs a version bump or something, they'll come in and do it, but they're not day-to-day working on the tools and whatnot. Right.
So how are you all organized? I mean, I know that that the Blastwave guys have got a pretty formal structure, and there's a lot of people involved in governance. It strikes me that you sound very informal and relaxed. Is that really how it is?
We do have a board composed of a president, treasurer, and secretary, but it's fairly informal overall. We do try to come to consensus on the mailing list for issues and sort things out, just like any project that way. But we do have the board in place when that doesn't work.
Right. And why did you feel the need to have that board? Because you seem pretty organic, and yet you seem to have a legal entity that you are supporting. Was there a reason for having that?
I'll let Phil handle that, actually, because I came into the project just as the board was being created, so he'll have more of the history on that.
Okay. Well, to be a bit fuzzy and hand-wavy, we wanted to avoid some of the problems that happened at Blastwave with assets. So we wanted an actual entity that was committed to OpenCSW versus potentially other things. We didn't want it to get sidetracked off and yanked off to other purposes. So that's when we split off, we came up with the idea of okay, we need some kind of nonprofit entity. And so the original folks there, we agreed on making a Swiss nonprofit entity. So we're a registered Swiss nonprofit entity, officially registered, et cetera, and so that was it. And we had the first meeting. I think it was in Geneva. That was an interesting thing. But yeah, it's pretty. I mean, we don't have a budget. It is funny is that the Swiss organizational rules mandate that we have to have some kind of budget presentation, and so our budget presentation consists of, well, we didn't spend anything because we have no money. Next thing on the agenda.
So I remember you forming. Part of the context of that is that I know that Steve Christensen had a relationship with Sun. He was producing the companion CD for them. And I know that Dennis had a variety of relationships with Sun. Does OpenCSW have any form of relationship with Sun or now with Oracle, or is it completely disjoint?
No. There was some attempts. Sun was such a confused entity. The right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing. I was at various points in discussions with various VPs and senior VPs at Sun, and sometimes they say, "Oh yes, and we'll help you, and I'll get this guy." And the other time it was total stonewalling. So major mixed influences and messages there. At times I was exchanging emails with Jonathan Schwartz. Going to meet him at a conference once or twice, but we never actually got anything from him. And Oracle is a big wall. We don't really have any contacts at all. So like to. But Oracle is so big and mysterious, don't really even know where to start.
Right. I'll have you know that at Sun, the left hand and the right hand did know what each other was doing, and they hated it and argued about it the whole time. So one of the interesting questions that has come up is why Swiss? It seems fascinating that you should choose to incorporate in Switzerland. Is this because you have a great big vault of resources somewhere that you don't want disclosed to the international community, or is there some other reason?
Well, yeah, it was a combination of factors. The two main active other guys at the time, Ihsan and Dagobert, they're in that area. Ihsan is in Switzerland. I forget if they're actually both resident in Switzerland, or. But anyway, we also had some equipment in place at the time there, and so obviously they're at least both in Europe, and it just seemed like the easiest, most straightforward way to go. So standard open source methodology, go with what's easy and works.
You've got to be, I think, the first nonprofit I know of that incorporated in Switzerland. So that was sort of fascinating to me too. So thanks for asking that question, Simon. I'm more curious now about how you, as a packaging organization, deal with upstream. How often does the upstream change, and how much of a lag is there before you're able to get it back in your packages? And are you able to contribute anything that you need, particularly to build on Solaris, back to upstream so you have fewer patches over time?
Most of our maintainers make a good effort to contribute patches, interact with the community, and especially for packages that they're particularly interested in, that they look after. Version bumps happen sometimes the same night you see the release email. There are packages that certainly lag, but those tend to be ones that somebody swooped in, packaged up, used for a while, and then maybe their site doesn't need it anymore, so they lose personal interest in it. I guess you'd call those orphaned in the Debian sense.
And how often, how many packages are we talking about? Are we talking about 500 or 5,000? I just want to get a magnitude here of things that I might be able to install on my Solaris machine.
I think it's sitting at about 2,500.
Wow. That's significant. That's great. And one of the things I've struggled with before, and maybe you can answer this for me, is like, okay, I'm on a Mac. I have Mac ports, and it has a lot of things available for it. But every once in a while, I get some piece of software that's not available for Mac ports, and I want to sort of still have it in the same flavor as everything else is installed on my machine. Is it easy to take a native distribution and turn it into a local package under OpenCSW, or is that really difficult?
Depends how you do it.
It's using the standard Sun format, so it's as easy or hard as people consider that. We do have directions. Well, I used to have directions. For internal packages, we're mostly pushing on this sort of framework, kind of like Deb Helper. But I used to also have directions up there somewhere about how to just directly make some packages by hand. So, I mean, if you're willing to familiarize yourself with that, it's certainly doable, and you can do it just for your own purposes or integrate with our packages if you like.
And another thing I know about Solaris, since I played with OpenSolaris for about 6 months before I went back to FreeBSD. Sorry about that, guys, but I found FreeBSD a lot more sensible to me. But one of the things was this thing about the these XML files for the management part of the software. Does that have to be created uniquely for Solaris then, or do a lot of the upstream packages already have that?
Which XML are you referring to?
The stuff for the admin interface, SVC admin or whatever it is, the special services thing that goes on in Solaris.
Right.
That's getting back to one of the class action scripts that Phil mentioned. We have a class action addition that will take a regular init script and do all the XML magic for you. For the generic case, but in the specific case, you can override that and provide your own if it's required for the package. And that's all integrated into our build system. So for the most part, you just place a file where it needs to be, tag it with the class action script, and away you go.
Oh, that's simpler then.
So we really, it's a lot of the magic sauce that makes packaging with OpenCSW easier than it could be otherwise.
Great, yeah, because I know that was one of the issues I had, which was that I hadn't been a Solaris admin, at least not since Solaris 2 back in the early days, and so it had changed quite a bit in the 7 versions in between, I guess, and so I didn't have a good sense of how to make these XML scripts for things that were local to me, things I wanted to install that weren't part of the packaging system available at the time. So, given the I was curious about infrastructure. So you guys get downloads all the time, right? So where are these downloads coming from? And can you give us an idea of the hardware and infrastructure you have set up for doing that?
Well, the primary infrastructure that we have is a build farm in Germany. And then we have our master mirror, I believe, is also in Germany. And our web host is in Switzerland. Baltic Online is the sponsor of our hardware in Germany. And we have a node for Solaris 9, Spark, and x86, 10 on both architectures there as well. Dago, our build farm admin, can spin up instances almost on demand, it seems, when we need something new. If we want to build against a different catalog, for example, we can do that quite easily.
And what kind of
Other than that, we rely on...
Sorry, go ahead.
Build activity?
Yeah.
I really don't know. Again, we're 15 guys primarily active. So you get on there and you're building away, but you're not generally paying too much attention to what else is happening. The load isn't such that you need to pay attention generally.
I guess that's true. You're not actually building constantly. You're only building when somebody updates a package. And how many updates are there in a day? Oh,
Phil, you'd probably answer that better than I would.
Yeah, I'm the release master at the moment. Whereas Debian has a handful of guys, they also have higher traffic on updates. So we actually have a sort of weekly summary of release packages. It varies highly from day to day, but on a weekly basis, it's often we have somewhere between 10 and 20 updates.
Okay, so it's not a huge activity. How about the download bandwidth? Is it big? I mean, are there how many people do you think are actually downloading OpenCSW packages? Is there some sense of that?
Well, we have 300 people on our user mailing list, and back when we had like Debian, we have distributed mirror sites, so it would be tough to tell all of our stuff, And iBiblio, one of our main sites, unfortunately decided we were too much traffic and turned us to the unmonitored downloads thing. But we were having a couple thousand a day on iBiblio. At one point, up to like 9,000, I think. But so somewhere around there.
Nice. Are you looking for more assistance? Are you looking for people to contribute to the project? And if so, what kind of people?
Absolutely, yeah. We'd welcome more volunteers, people who like Solaris and want to see packages, software done nicely. We try and put together something that's going to work, rather than something that kind of halfway works, and keep things integrated. So yeah, if you can deal with that and deal with working together with people rather than doing everything away, then we'd love to have more people working.
Great. And how about what's your infrastructure like? Are you building things with I'm hoping Perl, but it's probably Python, right, or PHP? What's your website all that in?
Too bad we don't have the website guy on. We have a wiki, which I don't know what the backend is, and we have a WordPress for the main site. And our build infrastructure is a lot of Python, I believe.
It's okay. It's probably all indented properly. That's the important part. All good. All good. And so I'm running out of things to ask here. My question list is almost done. So I just wanted to ask, is there anything else you'd like our audience to know about OpenCSW?
Oh, wow.
Come and drop by our IRC channel. We call ourselves the Friendly Solaris channel because if you hang out in the regular Solaris channel, it may not be very inviting. So if you want to come and learn more about Solaris, we're a good bunch of guys to learn from.
Oh my God, I so know that. Let me give you my experiences. One of the reasons I don't use Solaris today is because when I went to the Solaris IRC channel to ask some questions, I was, in the Amazon EC2 cloud, you basically had two choices at the time. You had Linux, you had Open Solaris. And so I didn't quite understand how to do some sysadmin things that I was sort of struggling with. I went to the Solaris channel, and boy, I got like completely screamed away there. So if I had known about you guys back then, I might still be using Solaris today. But no, I'm back on FreeBSD for a bit because it seems to be working. And now there's FreeBSD at Amazon EC2, so I might be running that there as well. Although given last week's outages, I'm not sure I'd be going there either way. Anything else you want us to know about OpenCSW?
Give us a try. We're nice and easy. The packages give you a much easier experience in a Solaris userland, which can be a little bit baroque at times. So we can kind of take the rough edge off Solaris.
Very good, very good. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming on today and talking about your project, and wish you well. And if anybody wants to find out more about it, we'll have links in the show notes. That's been Philip Brown and Ben Walton of the OpenCSW project. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Very good, very good. So, Simon, what do you think?
Well, it's a blast from the past, really. I remember OpenCSW splitting off from Blastwave, and there was all sorts of fascinating controversy that the guys were very cautious about digging into there. So I have a certain familiarity with the topic. It's fascinating the number of different places that you can go to get open source packages for Solaris. There's at least 4 of them now, as far as I'm able to count.
Well, Simon, dig out a little bit of the dish there. What was the controversy then?
Oh, it was, as Phil alluded to, it was to do with the way that the Blastwave activity was being administered, and it's really of negligible interest to the FLOSS Weekly community. But as with all of these things, it was a community that spawned out of a disagreement between people. And it led to a new richness. It's interesting to note that evolution requires mutation, and with no mutants, there is no progress. And that's where OpenCSW has come from.
Kind of like the way we have now NetBSD, FreeBSD, and OpenBSD, all of internal struggles from each of those groups. So it's actually kind of interesting how that happens over and over again in the community. When you have the ability to fork and the pressure mounts to the point where a fork makes sense, forks happen, and I think that's actually a healthy thing. And we could actually compare that then to say the the non-open software that's out there. Not that free software is not commercial, but the non-open software out there, we don't really see this in terms of, say, people abandoning Microsoft products and kind of taking the code base with them and creating their competitors. It just doesn't happen then.
Well, you just can't do it. If your supplier decides they're going to discontinue the proprietary software you're dependent on, your only choice is to go do something completely different. And I'm convinced that this is one of the key benefits that you get from open source software. It is what I call open source community escrow, where in case of crisis, you just rehost and carry on as if nothing had happened. And it's happened time and time again. It's happened at the company that I'm working with now. Their URL is here on the screen, ForgeRock. We came out of that similar process of rehosting and just carrying on with Sun's identity middleware. And all over the open source community, there's examples where the fact it was open source protected people's freedoms, protected their ability to carry on doing business with the software that was crucial to them. And people do speak about forks as if they were a bad thing, but actually they are the expression of the freedom that software freedom gives you.
Well, they're a bad thing if they happen trivially. So if just, oh, I don't like the 3 guys that are running the project right now, and I go and fork it because of that, that's probably not such a good thing, because then we had a little bit of this in the Squeak community. We have a fork of Squeak called Pharaoh, and it's attracting a lot of attention. And it happened because the Squeak core sort of stopped development for a while for many, many reasons. And being on the Squeak board, I'm particularly interested in this because I'm now seeing a problem that both Squeak and Pharaoh are sort of developing independently. And I'd really like to see a lot of the Pharaoh guys working back on Squeak, or maybe just having one distro again. But I don't know if I'm going to see that for a while. So a casual fork, yes, there's an issue with that. But you know, on the other side, as I was alluding to a moment ago, it's really nice, though, that if there is something really not working about a community level, or not working at the sort of for the real users level, that developers can walk away with a copy of everything and get it to work. And that is something that I think if people get locked into closed software, they won't be able to take advantage of that. So it is definitely a benefit for open source software.
Yeah, the other thing people have got to watch out for is that the software they're using, which claims to be open source, actually lets them do that. There's open source software out there that you would find it really challenging to pick a copy up and take somewhere else and start a new community. You wouldn't have the build scripts. You wouldn't have the instructions for running the infrastructure. There's other secret elements of the operation of the community that you wouldn't have, for example, extensions that are critical for operation. So I do believe that as an open source community, we have to guard this ability to create new communities and new forks. And, you know, it turns out that it was a good thing that the OpenCSW guys were able to pick up their hosted activity from Blastwave and start a new Swiss-hosted open source community. And in just the same way, I think we all have to protect that freedom to fork, because it's the one thing that you'll discover is impossible to simulate when a crisis does come along.
Yeah, for example, I know that for a while there was a project to bring, with the Darwin stuff, to try to bring the OS X software to be completely forked and be able to be booted. But there was some secret sauce that Apple maintains internally that we can't do as public. And actually the project to, I think, keep Darwin open is gone now, because it just couldn't stay in tune with and up to date with what was happening with Apple. So we do have that problem, and it's not just this. It's not just having copies of the .c and .h files. It really is all that's extra stuff you're talking about, the secret, the magic make files, the build scripts, and all the stuff that happens internally. That all has to be available and understandable by somebody outside the community to really make it work.
Yep. Yep. And the interesting thing is that, you know, if you're dealing with a corporate hosted activity, they may well have a complete right to keep all of that operational stuff outside the realm of free software. And so I do believe we have to be very watchful for corporate hosted activities and make sure that they are truly protecting our software freedoms. Because in the final analysis, it's that software freedom that really matters. You know, a lot of us are very pragmatic about open source. But in the final analysis, what we're doing is exercising our software freedoms, and there does come a point when you do have to get a little bit philosophical, get a little bit practical, and decide that you're going to protect software freedom rather than just focus on the code.
Absolutely, absolutely. So may the forks be with you is all I can say at this point, because I had to throw a bad pun in there somewhere. All right. So speaking of bad puns, let me talk about the upcoming guests. We have next week we have Dustin Mitchell talking to us about BuildBot, which is the speaking of forks, it's sort of like Jenkins, but done with Python and a bunch of other nice, cool scripts. And for those of you that enjoy Randy Harper on this show, FreeBSD Girl, she'll be back on being the co-host for that next week. We have Matthew Flatt coming up shortly after that, talking about Racket, which is PLT Scheme. It's a training language, teaching language that's originally based on Scheme and Lisp, and but really gets you so you can immediately get in there and get some graphics happening on the screen right away, and really great for kids to be able to do that. Again, speaking of Jenkins, we've got Kosuke Kawaguchi, I'm probably mispronouncing that again, sorry guys, is going to talk to us about Jenkins, which used to be called Hudson. Simon, I hope I get you back for that show, because I want to talk about the Oracle implications of that as well. Jenkins is a build system. It's a build and testing system that constantly downloads your packages and makes sure that everything sort of builds together and gets installed into the right kind of packaging system that you want. Curtis Jewell, a friend of mine, is going to be talking about Strawberry Perl, which is the Perl that runs on Windows. That enables you to take arbitrary CPAN packages and install them. Boy, this is a show about packaging, I guess, today. I'm trying to schedule the next week or two a phone call. He's way off time. He's in India, I think, or something. But Sitaram Chamarte is going to talk to me about Gitolite, which is the hosting system for Git repositories, similar to what GitHub does. Not as many features as GitHub, but it's going to be the full features available there. He's going to talk to me pretty soon about that. A lot of the people on the short list, go to twit.tv/floss, see where the link goes up to take you to the upcoming guests. Let me see my notes here real quick. I got to get rid of that. There we go. I am going to be in New York next week. I have a meetup happening with the Perl Mongers there. If you follow my tweets, you'll know where that's going to be. It's going to be at the Peculiar Pub, if you know where that is, on Wednesday night. But you can come hang out with me there. The week after that, I'm on a cruise. So once again, sailing away as part of my job. Really tough ways to go there. And then the week following that, I'm going to be in Boston. So again, there's the Boston Perl Mongers have me hooking up, I think, on Tuesday night there. But again, follow my tweets or tweet me at Merlin, M-E-R-L-Y-N. See if I can say that clearly, M-E-R-L-Y-N, all 6 letters there. If you tweet me, I will try to hook up with you. That'll be great. Again, lots of other places to see me online. But Simon, where can we find you?
Well, I got taken to task last week by the folks over on Identica for failing to point out that you can chat with me on Identica's microblogging system. So I'm Webmink on Identica. Also, given that a lot of the listeners to the show this week will be from Sun installations, I should point out that you can also find me at forgerock.com. That's the company where I'm working now. And in particular, I know a lot of those people are coming up to license renewal time on their Sun DSEE installations, and they really should check out our completely open source LDAP server, OpenDJ, which is a smooth transition from DSEE. If people would like to run into me, they'll find me on my website at webmink.com. I'm speaking at a conference in Vienna at the end of May, which is a new open source conference being organized by the business community there, OSS Big, and that's on May 31st. And I'm also speaking at OSBC in San Francisco on May 16th. And I would love to see any Floss Weekly listeners at any of those events. And yes, I'd be delighted to come and talk to KK with you about Jenkins in a couple of weeks' time. So Webmink on Identica and, of course, on Twitter. Webmink.com is my website. ForgeRock.com is where you can find out about OpenDJ and OpenAM and upgrading from Sun's identity products. And I think that's all the plugs I have this week.
Oh, great, Simon. Thank you. And thank you again for being a co-host on the show. I always appreciate your insight about things that we both are interested in, and sometimes the things that you're more interested in than I am, and sometimes the things that I don't know anything about. I guess that covers everything at all. Thank you again, Simon, for coming on the show.
Pleasure.
Very good. So, and I hear the music coming up, so it must be time to say we'll see you all again next week on Floss Weekly.